Good evening. I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the board of the School Board of the Metropolitan School District of Washington Township for Wednesday, February 8th, 2012. Let the record show that all board members are present this evening. And Dr. Milliman, would you mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dr. Milliman. It has been a sad day in Washington Township. We have lost two members of staff today. Corey Hendricks, a math teacher at Northview, and Carmen Burns, a longtime instructional assistant and permanent substitute at Spring Mill Elementary School. If you would, please join us in a moment of silence in memory of those two folks and the families and friends they leave behind. Thank you. It has become our practice at our first board meeting of the month to read our mission statement, our district mission statement, to remind us all why we are here. Ms. Harris, would you please read the mission statement for us?
The mission of Washington Township Schools is to develop lifelong learners and globally minded citizens by fostering the academic, creative, and social skills needed to achieve excellence in a multicultural environment.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. With that, we move on to approval of the consent agenda. Dr. Woodson.
Thank you, President Deswiner, members of the school board. I recommend that you approve the consent agenda for this meeting, which includes the minutes and records of the January 25th, 2012 regular meeting and the January 25th, 2012 memoranda of executive and study special sessions. A claims docket in the amount of $21,601,689.96. This claims docket is typically larger than usual annually because it's the first one of 2012, picking up all of the year and the new year expenses to date. Certified personnel includes two retirements, number 6 through 7. Classified personnel, number 12. There are 12 new hires, number 97 through 108, and 2 resignations, number 40 through 41. An addendum to the classified report from HR containing 5 new hires numbers 83 through 87. This corrects an error in the December 14th classified personnel report, and we'd like to request your approval of an addendum to the certified HR report containing 1 new appointment, number 68, 4 maternity leaves, that's number 14 through 17, 1 child rearing leave extension, number 1, and 1 resignation, number 8. There is 1 non-competitive grant presented tonight for approval. The total amount of this grant is $24,200. You've received detailed information about this grant in your packets. We do not have any gifts or donations presented for your approval tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Woodson. Mr. Kay?
Just one question, Dr. Woodson, and I don't know if this goes to you or Mr. DeLay. The non-competitive grant, do we know when or if we're going to get that? I know that the executive summary kind of made it.
He is here. I will let him speak.
This grant is a little different from, it is a adult secondary credit grant. So the way it works is every adult ed program was awarded the exact same amount. So students that come in suspended, expelled, or withdrawn that earn a secondary credit, a high school credit, all we have to do is once the student has completed the course, we submit that student and we receive $550 for each student. So with a maximum of the $24,200 that we will receive. And we've already put, I think, 18 to 20 students through it already. So So, we're on pace to pretty much hit that number right on the money. And it's a new grant money that we've never had, so it's something that DWD in compartment with the Department of Education has put together. So we all received it. We don't know whether we'll receive it next year or not, but that's basically the criteria for it. Once we put the student through the class and they've completed the course, they're going to give us a little bit of money back for that student to help offset the cost of the students. It kind of puts them in a separate category from basic adult education, which are students trying to receive their GED, because those credits can go towards a high school diploma.
Thank you. If there are no other questions, Mr. President, I would move the board approve the consent agenda as presented by Dr. Woodson.
Second motion.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any other questions or discussion, board? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? The motion passes unanimously. With that, we move on to superintendent's announcements. Dr. Woodson.
Thank you, President Deswaner, members of the board. I do want to report to you on our tragedies in our district with our Washington Township staff family, that we have commenced proper communications with both situations, as well as counseling supports for any staff or students who would like to partake of those services. The Hendricks family had planned a benefit dinner well in advance, and we still are advertising this to our community for anyone who wants to support this family. It is going to be held on February 24th, and the details and tickets or any way that families may want to support this family can be found in detail through contacting Northview Middle School. I wanted to make sure everyone knew about that. Other district news. If you have seen the paper, you are celebrating with us. We had a wonderful full-page ad highlighting Footsum, who received a week and a half ago the National Cross Country Runner of the Year from Gatorade and ESPN. We had a phenomenal press conference that was a surprise to Footsum. You can see the video on our website of not only the surprise but of the actual press conference. President Deswaner was there to see it in person, but the press conference and the surprise lasted about an hour, but his interviews were about 4.5 hours long that afternoon. It's a really big honor for Footsum, of course, personally, but also for North Central and Washington Township at large. Last night in this same room, we hosted our Bragg Educational Forum. This is a forum that the superintendent of Washington Township, superintendent of Lawrence Township, and any other educational leaders they'd like to invite to the panel have typically participated in. I participated in this event in Lawrence Township for the past several years, and last year I said, hey, you know what, I'd love to have you in Washington Township. So we were very, very excited to host it here last night. It went very well. We had all of our schools in the Bragg area, which include North Central as the high school, but Eastwood, John Strange, and Allisonville represented with booths of information for stakeholders to pick up, as well as the Lawrence Township schools, which are in the Bragg area, and the private schools. We also had the Eastwood Orchestra as the only student group performing as folks were coming in during the first half hour during the information and booth, walking around the booth time, and it was really nice touch. And then we had a wonderful, lively discussion on some hot educational issues. A member from the Department of Education joined us on the panel, so we had a really rich conversation over some major topics impacting public education today.
Dr. Woodson, just in case some folks are not familiar with the acronym BRAG, it stands for Benford Redevelopment and Growth.
Absolutely, and they encompass the east part of our district, but obviously not all of our district, but they are very, very supportive. They have done wonderful things in partnerships with our schools and to improve abilities for students to get to school and just work with our families and Crime Watch, and they're a very, very active group. Most people know them from their farmers market, which is a tremendous community effort as well. Also tonight, we want to wish our girls who are playing at this hour. I will get updates hopefully by the end of our board meeting, but they are playing in their basketball sectional away from home tonight, and we wish them good luck. A week and a half ago, we had 3 phenomenal nights of junior spec, and I will say my husband participated in junior spec when he was a student. It is a long-standing tradition at North Central, and not is it just a tradition, but it is a display of student talents in an unbelievable way. These are student-led, student-written, student-directed, student-casted, and of course student-delivered, and it's just a phenomenal display of talent, and I get wowed every single year. We also held the Washington Township Advisory Council last week under Dr. Milliman's direction. We had several topics, and it was a rich evening of conversation. The next Advisory Council will be March 21st, and we, of course, will make sure to advertise all the topics that we'll be discussing closer to that date. And, of course, you can always get updates on our website, or if you can't attend the Advisory Councils, the entire video is on our website. I was unable to attend the last Advisory Council personally, but I was able to catch up via our wonderful video system on our website. We also want to advertise registrations are available for a Great North Run. Our Washington Township Schools Foundation asked for our support at specific events only twice a year, with the Fall Bash and the Great North Run. So we certainly want to make sure we come out and support our wonderful foundation who supports teaching and learning in our classrooms. The date is March 10th, and registration is available in all front offices, including here at Central Office, as well as online. Yesterday, the Department of Education released high school graduation rates, and there was a great article in the newspaper. We also released a press release because we got asked by 4 media sources to comment. That press release is available in detail on our website. We are very proud of our continued high graduation rate at North Central High School. What we're most proud about is maintaining the integrity of that diploma. As you know from the paper, the Indianapolis Star yesterday, this question and concern over waivers being granted by high schools has come into play as of late, as the number of waivers granted has increased. We are proud to say at North Central the waivers granted has not increased. We remain under 10% of our graduates graduate on a waiver. And graduating on a waiver means that there is some special circumstance, and that could vary greatly, but you have not met the graduation requirements to receive that diploma, but the school and the district is granting you a waiver. To give you context for how special that low percentage of waivers granted at North Central is, the other large high schools in the state of Indiana had between 19 and 40% of their graduating classes receiving waivers. So we're very proud to maintain the high rigor and high academic excellence stamp and seal of approval that our North Central diploma holds. We certainly know we have things to work on, and those are evident in North Central School Improvement Plan. We're not ignoring issues, but we certainly feel strong about all the wonderful supports we have in place currently at North Central High School. Tomorrow, we have a wonderful celebration at Allisonville Elementary School. I mentioned several months ago how they were designated nationally as a Title I distinguished school. They attended the Title I conference in Seattle last month, where they presented the wonderful things they're doing to other schools around the nation, as well as received their award. Tomorrow, the Department of Education will join us in a celebration at Allisonville. All school board members are welcome to attend. If you'd like to attend, Mr. Pomeranke asked that you show up about 7:50 tomorrow morning. Parent Council is March 15th, next week at 7 p.m., and we are very excited about the continued work that they are doing to support our community, and we highlighted them this month on Soup Scoop. So we took a different approach and did not talk about a specific school program, but talked about our parent supports in the district, and we hope everyone enjoyed that. The other piece I wanted to mention is today I attended the MYP site visit that we are having in the district currently. MYP stands for Middle Years Program, and that is the program for grades 6 through 10 for our International Baccalaureate District-wide Initiative. As you recall, our elementary schools had a site visit for the first part of the authorization process a year ago. It's now the time for the middle schools and the high school to have their site visits. So I attended a site visit today at Eastwood Middle School with the International Baccalaureate consultant, and I think he said it best. This is kind of the dipstick in the authorization process. It's not a time for International Baccalaureate to come and say, you're not ready for authorization, you can't do this, or you're doing great. It's a time for them to come and give critical feedback on our journey towards authorization. The conversation was rich. The staff inquiries into IB and the critical reflections on their work with IB were fantastic, and I'm very, very excited to receive those reports from the International Baccalaureate Organization. Other than that, we're continuing our good work in the district. We have some major testing coming up with iStep and iRead, and I will certainly keep the board updated as we get closer to those dates this spring.
Thank you, Dr. Woodson. We move on now to the time set aside on our agenda for comments from the public. And I understand we have at least 3 members of the public who would like to address the board on general matters. Just a reminder that the board does not hear oral complaints regarding specific students or personnel, that there are other means to address those issues. When I recognize those who would like to speak, please come to the microphone so that all and the board might hear your comments. Please identify yourself with your name and your address, and if helpful, provide an affiliation to the district to give the board context for your comments as well. We would ask, we set aside about 20 minutes in our agenda for this, and so we would ask each speaker to limit their comments to 3 minutes a person. And just a reminder that the board generally hears these comments but does not choose to respond or deliberate them at this point in time. With that having been said, is there anyone who would like to address the board this evening? Ms. Ritz.
I'm Glenda Ritz, President of the Washington Township Education Association, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to all members of the board on behalf of teachers in Washington Township. I will speak this evening on the topic of teacher hours for the 2012-13 school year. With an increase to student hours at the elementary level, we know there will be an increase in teacher hours. We appreciate the collaboration regarding student hours to arrive at the student hours proposal that you will review this evening. Regarding teacher hours, which are linked to student hours, I am here this evening to present a petition to the board. There are times when the board needs to know that collectively teachers need their voices to be heard. I have a petition of over 450 signatures, and I know that a few pages didn't reach me in time to present to you this evening.
Okay, sure.
The petition reads, the teachers of MSD Washington Township urge the members of the MSDWT School Board to approve on February 22nd a teacher's hours plan aligned to a student hours plan that achieves the following goals. Number 1, create an affordable plan to increase teacher hours utilizing ideas regarding implementation. Number 2, determine the use of added time and how it will be used to improve student achievement. Number 3, preserve after-school programs for students that have minimal impact on teacher desire to run the programs, student participation, and family commitments. Number 4, maintain equal opportunities for all levels of teachers to coach and to provide extracurricular activities to Washington Township students. 5, be sensitive to the ending time of the teacher's day to promote continued attendance at district-level meetings that take place after school. And 6, improve teacher morale and foster teacher buy-in by presenting a plan that has purpose and one that teachers will appreciate as being fair. Teachers work hard in this district, and the board has always fairly compensated teachers for the work that we do. We expect the board to do the same in compensating teachers for these added required hours. Just as you asked for the cost analysis of the classified staff to increase the elementary student day, I urge the board to request from administration a true cost analysis for the time added in the teacher hours proposal that is being presented to you this evening as an information item. WTA will continue to discuss hours and these goals with administration up until February 22nd board meeting, at which time you will approve student and teacher hours, and hope that you will approve a plan that will meet the goals outlined tonight. I want to conclude with another thank you to you and the administration in this district for valuing the teachers' viewpoints on many important issues this year: teacher evaluation, student hours, teacher hours, and soon-to-be bargained, teacher compensation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ritz. Are there others who would like to address the board this evening? Sir?
Sorry that I'm walking in so late, but my name is Tim Bass, and I've had 2 kids here in Washington Township. I brought a poster of my daughter who's getting ready to graduate. From the University of Tennessee. I'm bringing this picture tonight only because her first grade teacher, Ms. Chorowski, spent the weekend with us in Tennessee over the weekend, and Ms. Chorowski has always been my daughter's favorite teacher. I'm bringing that picture tonight only because my daughter attends the University of Tennessee. She's only 5'2". She's the first player in the University of Tennessee's history to play at that level, being that size. I remember here in Washington Township, so many people told my daughter, because she was small, what she would not be able to do. Ms. Chorowski and so many other people here in Washington Township believed in her, and now her dream has been fulfilled. There's a picture in my daughter's room right now, ever since she's been in first grade, of a player that played at Tennessee. Her room has never changed to this day. And I'm saying that because she has been an inspiration to so many people, not only here in Washington Township, but at the University of Tennessee. We were there Sunday, and those posters were given away they were not just given away, but you had to buy them. But they were sold out in 20 minutes. We were told by the University of Tennessee staff that Brianna is not really considered a superstar. She doesn't start. She's a role player. But ever since they had autograph signing for players, such players like Tamika Catchings and Shamika Holtzclaws and Candace Parker, where Brianna's was the longest line ever at the University of Tennessee. She had to stay in line for 2 hours just to sign autographs because the love of Knoxville for a player that's 5'2", that gives hope to so many other young people there at the University of Tennessee and just kids throughout. Well, I'm here only because a few weeks ago I wanted to use Washington Township Schools facilities and at Northview, because my wife and I, as I said, I've been in this township for 25 years. I worked in this township. I started at North Elementary and left North and went over to North Central High School and did some work at West Lane Middle School. And it's always been our passion to give back to young kids, because I felt like Washington Township has helped both of my kids. My son attends Hanover University, and my wife's not here tonight because he has a game tonight. He's playing, so I told her I would come up here. But on the weekend, we've created another program for Washington Township families. I'm an employee at Eli Lilly and Company, and I do empowerment workshops there. And I want to come here to Washington Township to help families and young people here and African American young men. I have a lot of my African American friends at Eli Lilly and Company who are willing to come here and volunteer their time just trying to give back. I'm not trying to discriminate and say that we don't want to help all people, but I do have a passion for helping young African American men succeed in life, to go to college, trade school, or whatever. Well, a few years ago, 1998, my wife and I, we created this program. It doesn't exist now. But it was a program called Teen Talk. Miss Lawrence, that's sitting over here, used to be my elementary teacher. So we go way back. But this is a shirt, 1998, it was created. And it was a program geared toward helping Washington Township students. We average about 75 students on the weekend. This program was just geared towards keeping young kids off the street, giving them something positive to do. And we've been able to track these young people, throughout their careers, because a lot of these kids are my daughter's age. And 75% of these kids have gone to college and have done well. Most of them have graduated and have done well. And like I said, I'm proud as a parent for what Washington Township has been able to do for my family. The teachers and the principals and, Dr. White and so many other people who have extended their love and their time helping our kids.
Mr. Bass, I apologize. It's my unfortunate duty to try to keep us to 3 minutes per.
All right, I'm sorry.
We're already a little over that.
Okay. But
thank you.
The concern I had is I was using Northview Middle School a few weeks ago, and 2 days before my event, I get a call from the business office telling me that I could not use the facility, only because I did not have a certificate of insurance. And no one informed me that I had to have that certificate of insurance. And I was told that if I didn't have it, I would have to cancel my event. And that bothered me because we had let so many people know that we were having an event up there, and I didn't think that it would be fair to have to cancel an event 2 days before my event. Nobody gave me a plan B, or this was the first time anybody had ever contacted me. Well, the permit had set on somebody's office on that Monday, January 23rd. I didn't get a call from the business office until the 26th. I had been waiting for about 3 weeks trying to see if I could use that facility or not. And the only time that I was contacted was 2 days before my event. That's the only concern that I have. And the price that I was charged, I'm not going to say it, but I felt like the price wasn't fair, because even if I could not afford it, I was not given a plan B to have my event somewhere else. So I'm just saying, maybe in future events, if parents or whoever wants to use the facility a week or 2 weeks will be, a heads up to, let me know if I can have my event here in Washington Township or not. My events are free. I'm not trying to make a profit or anything, from what I'm trying to do. This is our way, my wife and I, our way of giving back to Washington Township because of what Washington Township has done for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bass. And congratulations to Brianna and your son as well. Are there any other members of the public who would like to address the board? Mr. Pomeranke. Oh, and Mrs. Balagapal, please.
We'll speak one at a time, the word too. Well, I will say one thing, your daughter was fun to watch. At 5'2", she was everywhere, and what a joy she was to watch. We're excited about this having a longer day because, guys, you put our positive, caring teachers and you give them another 40, 45 minutes a day of teaching with our students, and you're going to have increased learning. What a wonderful opportunity for Washington Township, for our kids, to be able to work with kids more. I'm here today, I want to talk about the 3 days compared to 2 days, but on the protected time, it's real important. I have a large school, and because I have a large school, I have 6 sections. And some schools that are smaller have 5. And when you have 5 sections, you can have everybody off at the same time, and you can have planning time, okay? And some schools have that right now. They're doing IB, reflection, IB. I can't do that. I have to have everything after school because I can't get all 6 teachers together at the same time. What I'd like to do is, if we do get the 3 days of time, is number one, on the first day, it would be our PLC meetings, and you guys have all been involved with those. Our IB would be that we'd be alternating IB reflection time, faculty, and staff development. And in Allisonville, we do a lot of staff development, and I'm sure they do that at other schools. Our second day would be team planning time, would be strictly for the teams. And we need that. The teachers plan, and they do a great job with planning. Our third day would not encompass all the teachers. We run our Tier 3 meetings, and the way that we run them, we have our entire team. We take a look at that. That's about 7 people. And we try to have double meetings, either a special ed or a speech or a PBS meeting at the same time. But what I'm concerned about is being effective. And for us to be effective, I need to have those 3 days. I can't get all those meetings in that we need to have. We're all here because we're concerned about kids. But for us to be effective, we need 3 days. Thank you.
Well, and Mike shared one perspective. I wanted to share another from another school, although we really stand here representing all of our elementary colleagues. I do want to say I too am very excited about having the possibility of some really well carved out time for us to work together as the grown-ups who are in charge of helping students be effective and efficient learners with high achievement. That's one of the things that's always drawn me to Washington Township, the high achievement that we have, and we want to continue to grow that. For us to be effective, as Mike says, we really need that time. We need that time where teachers are able to give their undivided attention to meeting in those professional learning communities, to be able to engage with each other. And I have seen tremendous learning happen on the part of everybody, including myself, in terms of watching and learning from others. It's a great time for us to share that wisdom that we have collectively about kids and to really build on that and grow it without having to be torn, I'm sorry, I speak with my hands, without having to be pulled in different directions. So to have a carved out time makes a huge difference there. We are excited about the IB world and becoming part of the IB world with our upcoming authorization. We'll go from candidate schools to IB world schools, and that really requires us to maintain a very high standard of education for students. This time will allow us to carve out very specific, purposeful work to help plan those IB units, to build on the reflections, because IB is about reflecting and revising on what we're doing. Our teachers can team up for interventions. That has been a very exciting thing that's happened at Spring Mill this year, where teacher teams have got together in their professional learning communities, but they have had to find time to actually figure out what are we going to do for different kids who are at different ends in terms of learning. So you want to provide enrichment and interventions, but you need time to actually make all that happen. And this time, these 3 days will be absolutely beneficial, without doubt. And certainly for the staff meetings where we do our professional development. For us to be a learning organization, the grown-ups in the organization need to have specific time to learn and grow together. A lot of our professional learning happens during the learning community time, where we're talking about children, where we're applying the things we've learned. But the actual trainings require a set of carved time. And so what I want to say to you is I stand here with Mike, representing other principals and assistant principals, to say to you, it's exciting that our district is looking at giving us very specific portions of time that will allow us to really enhance the work we do for kids. It'll allow us to really stretch the longer school days, going to give us more time to do writing and the science kits that teachers are really excited about, the inquiry piece in IB across the board, without feeling like we have to scrunch everything down. So thank you for looking at all of this and considering our thoughts and helping us move our district forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. And are there any other members of the public who would like to address the board this evening? Seeing none, we will then move on to the next item of our agenda. Thank you all very much for your comments and your interest in the students of Washington Township. The next section is action items. We move first to approval of new internet contract. Mr. Kneebone, technology just keeps increasing.
All the time. Dr. Whitson, President Deswaner, members of the board. A few months ago, we noticed our bandwidth starting to peak out. We were maxing our internet connection. In reaction to that, we went through the process of filing a E-rate 470, or a request for pricing. With the responses that came back, we found FiberTech to be providing the most affordable bandwidth option. They are our current provider, providing it also at all levels of service that we requested. We would actually be able to move our current bandwidth from 100 meg to 200 meg. We'll double our bandwidth for the same cost as what we're paying now for the 100 meg circuit. In that contract, it also maps out a scale. So if on the fly we need to adjust as we get hitting the max again, in line with testing coming up, iStep, we would have that ability without having to go back through the whole request for pricing process. So I am recommending the approval of the FiberTech contract for the 200 meg circuit.
Thank you, Mr. Kneebone. Mr. Kite?
Mr. Kneebone, just I think one question. I know that there's a one-time charge every time we increase bandwidth, I think, in other words, for each increase, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Help out someone who's not any more technologically savvy than getting email and texts on his phone. Is it likely that we're going to need an increase beyond this bump that you're recommending right now? Is there any way of knowing, based upon the impact of?
That's kind of a tough one. It depends. I don't foresee that in the course of the next year. But as adoptions move forward, text with the options, online curriculum, more testing, if they add more grades to iStep testing next year, all those things will impact that. So it's hard for me to answer that directly. I would say we don't foresee it in the next 12 months with what we know is coming.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Kneebone, certainly understand the appeal of the flexibility in the contract to bump up to an additional amount if necessary. Could you explain to us the mechanisms by which you make sure that if we avail ourselves of that option, we'd be sure that we're constantly going out there in the market to see if there's not another provider that could provide such capacity at a cheaper price down the road?
Sure. Well, it's the same scenario we find ourselves in right now, right? It's a couple years into our contract, we find that we can get the exact, for the same price, we can double our bandwidth. This is really kind of a schedule for the immediate future. So if something were to pop up, if they add more grades to iStep, we have that ability. Now, if we get out beyond a year or two, we would definitely want to go back and go ahead and go through that process. It's more of a safety net, so that if we need to, say for next month, increase that bandwidth, we have that ability to do so.
Thank you. Any other questions, Board?
If there are no other questions, Mr. President, I would move that the Board approve the Internet contract as presented by Mr. Kneebone.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion, board? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? The motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Kneebone. You set a high standard. We'll look forward to you doubling service at the same price next time. We move on to action item number 2, approval of the resolution to change 2 school board meeting dates. Dr. Woods?
Thank you, President Deswater, members of the school board. I'd like to request your approval of the resolution that you have in front of you to change 2 specific school board meeting dates we have upcoming. The first would be the May 31st, 2012 school board meeting, rescheduling that to May 23rd, 2012. The second change would be the currently scheduled July 11th, 2012 meeting to be rescheduled to July 16, 2012.
Dr. Woodson?
I move we approve the resolution changing 2 school board dates.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions or discussion, board? Mr. Kite?
Just a quick comment. I know this is the kind of thing that has always looked to me to be like, watching sausage made, but I think it's important when we change dates and change locations to give notice beyond what we think of as the ordinary notice, as far as posting it on the computer and all that and making it a big deal, not the biggest deal, but because people are used to events occurring when they occur, and we've always had them at certain times in the schedule set. So it may sound like a silly reason to comment, but I think it's important.
Mr. Turner, was there?
No, to say.
I was going to ask Mrs. Sutton if she could, when she makes the changes to these dates, pending board approval, to specify or note, particularly on those places like the boards up at the schools, that a date has changed. Notice a date change. Right. So that folks the very serious policy wonks out there who may have already put these dates on their calendar from last July would know that that date has now been changed. So bold or some way, this is a changed date. Notice of new date. Right. Having said all that, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion or questions, board? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion to change these 2 board meeting dates, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? The motion passes unanimously. We move now to the resolution to approve year-end encumbrances. Mr. Licata.
Mr. Deswater, members of the board, Dr. Woodson. First resolution is to approve 2011 year-end encumbrances, which will move appropriations or encumbered balances into the 2012 budget. This is some kind of housekeeping year-end activity we do every year. Both these resolutions are. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about the year-end encumbrance balances.
I just want you to define the word encumbrance.
It means a purchase order has been issued and you're obligating your appropriation.
Thank you, Mr. Licata.
Mr. President, I would move that the board approve the resolution, give its approval to the resolution to approve year-end encumbrances, as presented by Mr. Licata.
We have a motion and a second, not only presented by Mr. Licata, but defined by Mr. Licata. Are there any other questions on this year-end bookkeeping transaction, board, or any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? The motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Licata. We move then on to resolution to approve the appropriate...
Yes, thank you.
Oh, now I see the trouble. The resolution to approve appropriation transfers for 2011. Mr. Licata.
Throughout the budget year, we make appropriation transfers for various accounts within our taxable funds. And at the end of the year, we do one blanket resolution to have all of those appropriation transfers approved at one time. That's what this resolution is doing. Again, it's another year-end activity, similar to what you've done every year in either January or February. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about appropriation transfers.
Any questions, board?
If there are none, Mr. President, I would move that the board approve the resolution to approve appropriation transfers as presented by Mr. Licata, 2011.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any board discussion, board? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? That motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Licata.
You're welcome.
We then move on to the final section of our agenda, information items and board discussion. The first item is 2011 year-end financial report. Mr. Licata, hopefully you've got everything lined up correct.
I hope so. At least this is going in the right direction now. I don't know what's wrong with this computer. This is the year-end financial report for the general fund. As you can see, it looks very similar to our quarterly reports that I present to you throughout the year. This is the final, meaning all 2011 revenue has been collected, all 2011 expenditures have been posted. And I'll just draw your attention to a couple of items. Under the state aid basic grant, if you look at the column, second from the right, it shows a $3,378,000 reduction, and that was the budget cut that we endured from the state through the Department of Education for the 2011 funding formula. So every district had a reduction in funding as a result of the state budget cut. There was a similar one, about $2.9 million in 2010. Finally, we did have a cash balance at the end of the year, our operating balance of about $7.3 million. We've made one adjustment to that, and that is for approximately $1 million worth of positions that are currently being funded from stimulus money through the Jobs Fund, or job stimulus money. That funding will carry us through about August or September of 2012, at which time we'll make decisions on those positions, most likely moving some or all of them back to the general fund. That's why I've made that adjustment to the general fund balance, because it's a little artificially high right now because we're funding those positions using another source of stimulus revenue. When those dollars run out, those positions will come back to the general fund. So I don't want to show an artificially high balance with the understanding that a lot of those dollars have been obligated or committed for funding those future positions. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about this page before I move on to the remaining taxable funds.
Mr. Kite?
Mr. Licata, would you remind the board and the public of what the self-imposed cash balance limitation is that the board put in effect? Or
It was 5%, and that was established approximately 2006 or 7, I believe, that the district would move toward a minimum 5% operating balance at year-end. We did achieve that, I believe, by the end of 2008, and then since then we've maintained anywhere from about a 9 to 10 or 10.5% balance.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly, when one sees a $7 million balance, that might seem substantial, but when one also sees that the state can reduce general funding by $3.5 million in 1 year, it kind of makes that surplus look like a pretty spare cupboard.
That doesn't last long sometimes. The only thing that made that cut more palatable for us is we had an increase in enrollment in both of those years that they made a cut, so we offset a substantial amount of that budget reduction with some increased funding through the formula because of an increase in enrollment. It wasn't enough to offset the entire amount of the budget reduction, but it did cover about 3/4 of it for us. These are the remaining, they're not all taxable funds except for rainy day, which is not a taxable fund. I just include that fund because it's always a fund of interest for the board. We have the referendum fund, which we used for $4 million worth of expenses to help support the general fund operations. Debt service funds, again, servicing our debt, general obligation bonds, lease payments to the North Central Campus School Building Corporation. Pension bond debt service, again, servicing the $50 million in pension bonds that the district took out in 2005. Capital Projects Fund, again, used a lot to fund maintenance of buildings, technology, things of that nature. It shows a zero balance. It is not a fund with no cash in it, but capital projects is the one fund where you can carry appropriations and encumbrances forward to the following budget year. So we've shown where the appropriations that are carrying forward are funded through the remaining cash balance. That's why it shows at zero. There is money in that fund. It's just that those dollars are obligated to support the appropriations that are being carried forward from 2011 to 2012. Transportation Operating Fund. It's a fund that we pay our bus drivers and maintain our vehicles and all of those things from. Bus Replacement Fund is obviously the one that's used to purchase new school buses. And then finally, the Rainy Day Fund is the one that we transfer money into in the past from the Capital Projects Fund. It's now currently used to support safety and security expenditures within the district. When necessary, we use it also to support summer school. This past year, that was not necessary. We did get a sufficient reimbursement from the state through the summer school grant to support our summer school program. I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Just as a reminder, Mr. Licata, outside of the referendum fund and the rainy day fund, if I recall correctly, those other funds, the cash surpluses are typically a result simply of the cash flows coming in and out, and that we usually don't carry a large surplus from year to year in any of those funds. I know especially transportation operating fund, we've been talking a lot about the pressures on that fund, and while it looks like it may be healthy here, there's expenses coming that will draw that fund in.
And financially, the Transportation Fund did have a good year. I mean, they're doing an excellent job of managing their budget in that department. So I'm very satisfied with the transportation operation.
And fuel costs have helped us this year as opposed to...
It hasn't been as erratic as it has in past years. It's just been consistently high, which does help with the budgeting a little bit. And for 2012, we are in the fuel hedge program this year through the Indiana Bond Bank for about 50 to 60% of our fuel purchases. So that should help also.
Any other questions, Board, for Mr. Licata?
Thank you.
Thank you for the report. We move now on to update on student hours. Dr. Milliman.
See if mine comes up sideways as well here. There it is. Maybe a little bit large. See if we can scroll that down. Maybe Mr. Witt needs to help me as well. Yeah, I'm trying to... You got it? I think they can get the gist of it here. Let me see if I can scroll. Does that help? All right, very good. Good evening, President Diswater, members of the board. Many of the items I'll discuss this evening are review. However, we continue to make some adjustments based on the many pieces of feedback we receive throughout this process of looking at student hours. And so there are a couple, I believe, minor adjustments from the last time I was in front of you. I'll just review much of the process for the public as well as those updates for you at this time. The objective of any change in student hours has remained the same throughout our entire process, which is to address our elementary student day that is currently the shortest in Marion County. While the system of education in a school district and the quality of teachers certainly combine as significant factors in student achievement, the many challenges facing our schools today, including new Common Core state standards, needs for developing literacy in new ways for our students, and meeting the ever-increasing accountability standards, requires more daily time than we are able to currently provide. In addition, we are challenged to find a means to lengthen our elementary day without a significant impact to our middle school or high school instructional day and without added transportation expenses. Transportation is a major consideration when addressing the length of any district student day. All districts face transportation limitations regarding time and distances, unique expectations of districts and communities, and funding. Some of the limitations of our transportation department include the following. Each of our elementary bus drivers must drive a high school route, and many of our drivers drive middle school routes as well. Multiple routes per driver allow for the most efficient means in routing and allows for a continuous amount of time for the driver that's on duty. These multiple routes requires that the elementary day take place in the middle of our sequence of our 3 levels, elementary, middle, and high schools. The distance between our schools is obviously a fixed number, and therefore the time needed between drop-off and pickup time between those schools is a fixed number as well. Federal mandates in transportation of students require some routes to include distances longer than those normally servicing individual schools, and morning and afternoon traffic patterns obviously influence the efficiency of both our bus routes and our student drivers when they're combining the transportation to our schools. The student hours topic's been a priority of our Washington Township Advisory Council meetings beginning in September of 2011. During these meetings, a broad base of stakeholders provided input and suggestions. The stakeholder groups have represented teachers, administrators, students, parents, community members, business leaders, and community child care providers. We've presented and gathered information on this topic at PTO meetings at each of our schools, parent council, community organization meetings, and faculty meetings. We've conducted multiple surveys as potential solutions were brought forth, and the respondents to our surveys also represented a broad base of stakeholders. In addition, we responded personally to many stakeholders through phone calls and emails. All pieces of feedback, including our stakeholders' opinions on advantages and disadvantages of each option, continue to be available for review on our district's website. While we must be always mindful of our limitations when narrowing the options, those again including cost of transportation, logistics, complexities of transportation, and avoidance of our negative instructional time impact on our schools, we continue to bring forth options for stakeholder input. One of the options that remained on our agenda for the Advisory Council and on our surveys through mid-January implemented a sequence in which our middle school day would begin first and the high school would begin last in the sequence. While this option actually was not consistent with our goal of avoiding significant negative impact on instructional time at the high school, it was consistent with some research that suggests a later start time for adolescents is preferable when factoring sleep and growth patterns. As this option remained on our agendas and surveys, though, our stakeholders noted that the sleep pattern research was the only major advantage of that particular option and listed many other disadvantages which were shared by teachers, administration, and many parents. It's mostly due to the lost instructional time at the high school that required when factoring that in. Therefore, the administration did not choose this option to bring forward to you as a recommendation, just based, again, on that ongoing feedback. We've continued to modify a second option based on stakeholder feedback as well as feedback from our student-teacher hour task force, that's hard to say, which is a committee comprised of administration and our WTEA representatives per our collective bargaining agreement. The school day times that are shown on your screen and in your packet of information is the current draft that we would anticipate would be Dr. Woodson's recommendation at another board meeting, at our next board meeting, in fact. And under this option, as you can see, the proposed high school day would begin at 7:25, ending at 2:40, and 7 hours and 15 minutes. 8:25 to 3:25 in our elementaries, and 9:10 to 4:10 at our middle school. You might note the drop-off times and bus departure times are noted as well, and this was all of our options were run through our transportation department several times for their blessing and approval to verify that they can efficiently route all of our students. This current draft of the daily schedule adds significant time to our elementary school year by increasing the student day by 50 minutes. It's important to note that one option that we considered before this particular draft increased the elementary day by 45 minutes, although this change made transportation times difficult when routing upper grades and also impacted the high school day. Another option increased the elementary day by 65 minutes, and this option created some concerns about the length of the day for our very young primary elementary students from some of our feedback, and it did create some supervision challenges for our middle school administration as well. This schedule increases the middle school day by 10 minutes above our current schedule. It does decrease the high school day slightly. However, by altering passing periods and balancing the period-by-period times to 50 minutes per class, our high school administration is comfortable with this particular draft. Just a note, there is inconsistencies, and if you have high school students, you know that. We have a 53-minute period and then maybe a 49 thrown in there and a 51. Probably due to conversations just like this over the years. You can't pinpoint exactly when those things happen. But this option would create a 50-minute period across the board, with the exception of third period where they do include announcements, so there's a little bit of a lengthened time there. In the brief time I've had this evening to represent this proposed schedule, I cannot possibly do justice to the many forms of feedback we've received, hundreds and hundreds of pieces of feedback, and I don't want to understate that, although I think I'll have to. And as noted when we considered our calendar as well, no option or proposal will be universally accepted or embraced by all of our stakeholders. I'm confident that some folks aren't pleased with our status quo schedule or calendar, which is the case in calendar or in schedule. Just impossible to meet the needs of absolutely everyone. We do believe, though, that this schedule does reflect to the best of our ability the option that is inclusive of the most advantages listed by all of the stakeholder groups that have given us feedback. I'd be happy to answer any of your questions at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Milliman. Questions? Mr. Kite.
I think just a quick one, Dr. Milliman. Thank you for all your hard work on this, at least for me individually. When you look at the current, what you believe is going to be the recommendation, shows minus 15 minutes at the high school, but a decrease of only 6 instructional minutes. Can you explain that?
Right. Again, part of the time is dealt with in adjusting the passing period between classes, and that would account for my high school colleagues are in the audience, I believe 9 of the 15 minutes right there.
10 minute is the current passing period, moving it to a 6-minute passing period.
Okay. And since you have more than, you realize we have 7 periods. We have lunch periods with also passing periods, so that's where you gain that extra minute. There's several passing periods throughout the day at the high school.
And I know they have had different times. I know Ms. Spanner pointed out 5 minutes back when it was a one-room schoolhouse. But since then, the school has become much larger. Is that still something that Mr. Brannigan thinks that?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
He's been at the table throughout the discussion.
Okay. Thank you.
I'd like to make a note also, it's displayed on the chart, but we're very excited about the opportunity for our students to have additional special area time through this proposal at the elementary level. Currently, they attend special areas for 40 minutes a day. This schedule would allow them to be in special areas for 50 minutes a day, and we're very excited about that. In the light of a lot of budget cuts statewide where special area opportunities for our elementary students are being cut in other school districts, we have a beautiful opportunity to add to those enrichment opportunities for our students.
And Dr. Milliman, I also, as we've stated before, really appreciate the effort that staff and you in leading that effort have gone through in collecting lots of feedback, looking at lots of different options. My one thought when I was reviewing this document was, if the end result is going to be only 6 minutes of instructional loss to the high school, I wonder if maybe it wouldn't be more appropriate to note the 6 minutes and footnote that it's an actual 50-minute reduction to the day, but because of the change
totality, or try to be...
Because in the end, what we're really most concerned about, I think, is the instructional minutes. And if that's the bottom line there, I think it's more important that we communicate that clearly.
Excellent point.
Yes, Mr. King.
I guess this is more of a comment, but I was, to be frank, Ms. Spanrotti and I were at the Fox Hill last meeting, and I was a little surprised at how emphatic folks were about really loving uniformity in terms of the class times. I mean, there were people at several tables when I was kind of walking around listening who were really very interested in that kind of newly arriving proposal that had come, kind of late in the process, in a different group, and about having 15-minute periods no matter what. Sure. I just thought that was kind of interesting. So obviously it made enough of an impression that it's looking like it's going to be part of the recommendation.
Any other questions, Board? I think we thank you, Dr. Milliman and Dr. Woodson, for making sure that this pretty substantial change has been very thoroughly vetted through this process, I think, with the Board, with all stakeholders. So appreciate that process. We move then on to update on student hours. Dr. Milliman, you're not...
Actually, I think calendar.
School calendar.
And I did, I believe, share our work on the calendar draft with the Board previously as well. We have shared a potential 13-14 school calendar draft, both with Washington Township Advisory Council at our previous meeting and with our central discussion. This draft is based on the 12-13 calendar, just moving corresponding dates forward as a beginning talking point. What we shared with both groups is that in 2013, to get my years straight in my mind, Thanksgiving does flip, as we like to say, to a later date in November. It's the 27th or 28th of November, so it's a little bit later. How that affects the calendar, if we were to move corresponding dates, would just alter the length of time or the number of student days between fall break and Thanksgiving break, and between Thanksgiving break and winter break. For 12-13, there's 5 weeks of school between fall break and Thanksgiving, and 4 weeks between Thanksgiving and winter break. When you move the dates forward, and with a late Thanksgiving, that moves to 6 weeks between fall break and Thanksgiving, and 3 weeks between Thanksgiving and winter break. That's the most significant change that folks might notice. We didn't get a great number or great deal of feedback on the calendar at our advisory council meeting in January, although the feedback does indicate that we're on the right track in adopting potentially a 2-year version of the calendar. There was positive feedback about that. Folks want some continuity. They want to be able to plan, and they seem to also understand that Thanksgiving is going to move again. So, that date, it won't be steady, so it's kind of a 1-year piece. If we, in fact, begin to enjoy this calendar, or one like it, and it would move forward for subsequent years. So I think the feedback was that we're on the right track and not tinkering with it too much, and so we feel good about that. We're going to get past a couple large items on your docket that you'll have over the next couple of board meetings, including this one and next, and then we'll begin a little bit more serious conversation about that, having a goal to bring a recommendation to you yet this spring, so that by the time our students are home for the summer, certainly, it would be our hope that we would have a 2-year calendar in place for them. So happy to answer any questions you might have.
Mr. Turner.
This is more of a, excuse the voice, but it's more of a comment, I think. Just what you just said about whether we can do more than 1 year at a time. We haven't had our first year yet. So I think I know you want to bring something to the board later on this year, but we haven't experienced the calendar that we have now. So I don't know if that would change the perception of the calendar, the way it's set up or not. So I don't know if doing it 2 years out, I don't know what the rationale behind trying to put together a 2-year plan this year before we actually do it.
We'll never be able to live the calendar before we have to look at that next school year. So it would be April or March of 2014 before we would have felt that entire new calendar, and that's really too late to begin discussions on the 14-15 calendar is what we felt.
Well, I thought this was the 13,
Yeah.
14, or was it the 12, 13?
I think that's what Dr. was, it would be late in the 12-13 calendar, is perhaps what she was mentioning, so that it would be difficult to know how we felt because we wouldn't have gone all the way through it. So I think that there's also, there's a lot of discussion, as you know, not only in our community, but in our legislature and other places that are continuing in uncertainty on what's being proposed for all of our calendars. So again, our thought was just some continuity for all of our stakeholders would be wise for us to consider. But I certainly understand what that has been a topic of ours as well.
Okay, and I think it might be actually, because we do ask for input from the district on just about everything we do, that if you have a chance to actually feel it and live it, the perception may even increase to the better. No question. So,
we got feedback when we took the calendar for your vote first semester of this year in 2011 for the 12-13 school year that they were finding out too late. This feedback was from staff as well as parents and families in our district. So to push that further past even first semester for a vote really does create some compromising situations for family planning. So that's a more rationale as to why we're looking at that 13-14.
I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. I'm just saying I think you might have even more input to say, as you put together a 2-year plan or whatever the plan is, I think there may be more positives to it once somebody tries it out. So I'm not saying we should hold off. I'm just saying that we should, it might be our benefit.
Yeah. I will note that we did receive some feedback through the process for 12-13 from stakeholders that wanted to do this as a 2-year, to live it for 2 years. But we had from the onset advertised that we were looking at the 12-13 calendar. So we said, well, we respect that and understand that, and obviously we have some agreement with that. That is why we did not recommend a 12-13 and 13-14 calendar at one time.
There were also some unknowns first semester with some state standardized testing and national testing dates that hadn't yet been released for next school year, let alone 2 years from now for us to put together that calendar. Some of those are becoming more known factors and dates now, which makes it easier.
Mr. Kite. I was going to make an observation that's just like a step away from that, just one step down the road. I think that it was interesting to me at the last advisory council meeting how when the calendar was brought up, and I guess this doesn't surprise me, when the calendar was brought up, it was the old, you could hear a pin drop or you heard crickets, and it wasn't, I don't think, because people in this township, at least my experience has been, are always interested in trying to set these things as far down the road as they can, set a calendar. I think it's just because they've been through it already and seen, even though your charts are colorful and they're detailed, they'd been living it for a little while and really swimming in it. So I think they'll be a little more excited when they get the other topics down the road a little bit.
Right. I would just add my 2 cents on that one as well. And while I understand the point you were trying to make, Bill, I do think that with as much change happening as we have right now due to these changes in state law, and given the very long and detailed process we went through with regard to calendar development, I do think there is an advantage to saying, well, let's look and see if it makes sense to try this for 2 years and then re-examine whether what we're looking at beyond that. So, Mrs. Van Roden.
From the advisory council, I'd say that the reaction from the stakeholders was like, oh, okay, let's move on to something else, and they really didn't. It wasn't that important, the 5 weeks and 3 weeks, and they were just like, okay.
Yeah.
So I think they're okay with moving forward.
Any other questions or discussion, Board? Thank you, Dr. Milliman.
Thank you.
Appreciate your updates. Dr. Brown, we move on to update on teacher hours.
hands. Can't do your magic here. A little bit more. There you go. Yeah. Let me just scroll it down. That's good right there. Good evening, everybody. President Dwanzer, members of the board, I would like to update you on our current draft of our teacher hours. As I've shared in my previous updates with the board, new legislation regarding collective bargaining changed in 2011. Previously, teacher hours were bargained and in the teacher's contract. The new legislation prohibits teachers' hours from being a part of the bargaining process, and so the law does require us to discuss teacher hours with our Teachers Association. Therefore, we have been engaged in conversations since November with our WTEA. We've met about 16 times now with the WTA in the past 4 months in the following formats: a professional relations group, centralized discussion group, and our task force on student and teacher hours. The details of these meetings are in your documents. We've also have meetings upcoming next week that are reflective in the timeline that you have as well. The objective of reviewing teacher hours was to build in time for professional activities on a consistent basis. The current teacher day, according to the 2010-11 contract, is a 7-hour workday with a 30-minute lunch. To allow for consistent professional activity time with teachers, the current draft I will explain to you tonight has a 7-hour, 5-minute workday with 30-minute lunch, 2 days per week, and a 7-hour, 55-minute workday with 30-minute lunch, 3 days a week. The elementary, on Mondays and Fridays, schedule will represent from 8 to 10 a.m. from 8 to 10 a.m. to 3:45 p.m., which is a 7-hour, 5-minute, 30-minute lunch day. And on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, 7:20 a.m. to 3:45 p.m., which is 7 hours and 55 minutes with a 30-minute lunch. The middle school, as it reflects, Mondays and Fridays will be from 8:45 a.m. to 4:20 p.m., which is a 7-hour and 5-minute workday with 30-minute lunch. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays will be 7:55 a.m. to 4:20 p.m., which is a 7-hour and 55-minute workday with 30-minute lunch. The high school on Mondays and Fridays will be 7:15 a.m. to 2:50 p.m., which is a 7-hour and 5-minute workday with 30-minute lunch. And Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays will be from 7:15 a.m. to 3:40 p.m., which is a 7-hour and 55-minute workday with 30-minute lunch. The Career Center, the teachers' regular duty hours in the Career Center will be as follows, based on their programs and designated by the Career Center Director. Teachers will work their hours that will be voted on by the board for the 181 student days and 4 teacher work days as designated on the board-approved school calendar for Washington Township. So teachers have certain professional responsibilities that cannot fit into the time between the teacher's schedule, arrival time, and departure time. So these are included responsibilities are reflective at the elementary level: 1 back-to-school night, 1 spring open house night, 2 supervisions per year as defined by the principal. The middle school will be 1 back-to-school night, 1 parent information night, 2 supervisions per school, also defined by the principal. The high school will be 1 back-to-school night, 1 parent information night, and 2 supervisions per year, as defined by the principal. And the Career Center will be 1 back-to-school night, one parent information night, one open house, and one recognition night. All of these additional responsibilities resemble current expectations of teachers today. On February 22nd, 2012, Dr. Woodson will bring to you an administrative recommendation for teacher hours and additional professional responsibilities for your vote. Other items such as prep time, expectations for professional activities and meetings, and the use of work days will be defined through administrative guidelines after the board vote on teacher hours and additional responsibilities. At this time, Mr. Dawson, Ms. Reynolds will join me at this time to share more information about the benefits that these teacher hours could lend to teaching and learning. Further, they will share some logistical information about the current draft of teacher hours, specifically from elementary and secondary education. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions afterwards.
Okay. Good evening. I've heard some various questions, so I just thought I'd say a few questions I've heard and answer them, and then if you have further ones, I will be happy to respond to those. One of the questions we heard about elementary was what would be some of the changes for the special area teachers and the special area classes. And really, as we've talked about it, the principals and I have had a lot of conversation about this, and the extra 10 minutes will really just involve special area teachers being able to go deeper into the curriculum, making more of the connections, particularly with IB, the great connections of the learning, and whether it be art, music, and so those curricular connections, just the time for those and the lack of rushing for those will just be great. So at the same time, that's allowing 10 more minutes for teachers for their preparation to have that time from 40 to 50 minutes. Another question that I've heard is what are some of the financial implications for extending the elementary day? And Mr. Licata and others of us looked at this, and we looked at the addition, not that these necessarily would always be, but these would be possibilities that we saw. Some special education assistants would need to have a longer day, not all of them, but some of them. Those would have the kids in most need. Also some more office time, possibly up to an hour more office time between the administrative assistant or the assistant that works with the administrative assistant. Another possibility would be an additional hour of the clinic nurse during the day at each of the schools. So that would up to be somewhere around, we saw around $100,000, could be anywhere. That's if you did all of those, somewhere between $100,000 and $120,000, but we wouldn't necessarily need all that. With flex time in all, particularly the office assistant area, that may or may not be needed. So those would be on the high end.
And that cost analysis would encompass all 7 elementary schools for that estimated $100,000 to $117,000.
Right. What some of the modifications I heard about for kindergarten, the conversation, is this too long of a school day for kindergartners? I will say in Marion County it's a very typical day for all the kindergartners except Washington Township, or within about 10 minutes of that. So we are not concerned about that, but one of the modifications we do know is that all of our kindergarten teachers, I would say, I just met with all of them this afternoon. We had a great meeting, and we have just a tremendous group of kindergarten teachers that meet regularly, and we always are talking about the need for a little more time for exploration, which honestly, as the first grade standards basically in the state and our country became the kindergarten standards, it seems like there was less and less time for that. So a little more time, a very developmentally appropriate exploration time, that would allow some of that. It certainly gives us more time for the reading and writing and preparing for reading and writing. And we certainly could imagine that as a kindergarten teacher, they may currently take a 15-minute recess in the day. That could be a second 15-minute recess in the afternoon if needed, or again, maybe that exploration time. But kindergarten teachers are just very savvy at being able to know when students need lots of changes, lots to be up and down and in different parts of rooms and doing different things. And so I think developmentally teachers know exactly what to do, but they will have a little more time in being able to offer those opportunities. How will the extra 40 minutes of instructional time be used generally? Now that was, I guess maybe I've got a couple questions here that maybe might lean over a little bit into the student day, but I just want to speak to this too. And how that would be the instructional time, just more time needed. A little bit what I said about the special areas, being able to make more curricular connections. I know we all always want more time. With our 90-minute reading block, it feels like we're always trying to carve out enough time for more writing, that's more time for writing. Certainly with our international baccalaureate work, the inquiry, we never have enough time for that. We wouldn't have enough time we had 10 hours probably with the way a lot of our teachers dig much deeper into the curriculum. So that would be another example. Will lunch and recess time increase? No, we don't anticipate, except, as I said, maybe with kindergarten it would, but lunch would still be 30 minutes as it is now. And again, going back to the other school districts that have this amount of time or close to it, no difference there. How will kindergarten teachers get support from the extended day for the youngest learners? In talking to principals and just in what I see in different buildings, our teachers and our kindergarten teachers get a variety of instructional support. Most kindergarten rooms do have an instructional assistant with them part of the day, not every minute of the day, but during the reading and writing blocks of time, definitely there's help at that time when we're doing intervention time. That's another one. And it may not always be just a kindergarten assistant. As our push-in model this year with Title, we have Title I teachers and specialists going into classrooms, K through 5. We have special ed is another area, and the special ed assistants may be going in. So the support can look different, but certainly our kindergarten teachers will have the support that they need for that. And another option for many of our schools, at all of our schools, but certainly more parents than some others, our parent involvement. Our kindergarten teachers and our kindergarten parents tend to do most volunteering would occur more at the kindergarten level than it does as children go up into the 5th grade, so to speak. So that would be another example of where we always will be asking for that, but that would be whether we had any hour days. So, and where will the 7-hour elementary ed day place us in Marion County? Well, currently we have the shortest instructional day in Marion County, and with the additional 50 minutes, we'll have the same time that Warren Township has. A few schools in IPS have a 7-hour and 5-minute, but varied in the area of them. They have many schools that start different times. There's just a couple that have that much time. And then our district in Warren would then have anywhere between 5 and 40 minutes longer than the other Marion County school days. That would vary depending upon the district. And so those are the questions that I've been asked, and I'm happy to answer. And if you have any others for elementary, I'm happy to answer those.
Mrs. Reynolds, I would love for you to talk about the use of the additional time at the elementary level on the teacher hour draft that we're viewing on this screen. How has your conversation with elementary principals been on the use of this additional time 3 days a week?
For the teachers after the students have left. Well, we've had some great conversation, and Mrs. Balgapal and Mr. Pomeranke spoke to that very eloquently tonight. But I would just add that in talking, we have all... This semester is a great example of the great work that people are doing on PLCs, professional learning communities and groups. It has been, because it's been one long block, I know that teachers work and principals work together, and usually if they do a professional learning community, they may have some of them are going from math directly into reading, and it's a lot. It's a long period of time that we've been very grateful for it, but I do think that everyone feels as though shorter blocks of time, but more frequently will give them more ability to, it's kind of like what we do with all of us. We all do better when we chunk things and have shorter periods than we have a very long period and we kind of get exhausted from it. So I think that would be a real plus. Staff meetings, instead of going, the elongated one that we currently have with 45 minutes, we wouldn't be doing that, but there are needs often for other meetings, just for people to communicate and to look at short staff development opportunities, maybe in some of the reading areas, maybe some math areas. Sometimes there's just a need for staff development with 2 or 3 grade levels. We do a lot of things K through 2 in this district, and other things 3 through 5. So, there's just many opportunities for that. All of our schools have leadership teams. They have teams, as was spoken about too, the RTI teams looking at the needs of different students that are getting supports, making sure that regularly those teachers of those students are meeting together. So it may not always be all teachers in all meetings, but the opportunity to know that all teachers are there, and that when they're not meeting in these, that they can be meeting and doing their professional growth with one another in whatever way they care to do. But just to be able to have the time to really spend on curriculum, and as we have our national core standards are beginning now, and our kindergarten teachers have certainly been working on those all this year, we've got all that ahead of us. Well, it's exciting, and of course we know, because we're an international baccalaureate district, or in becoming one in total, that we've been told that will be, and we can see where it will not be as difficult for us, because we do have higher level thinking in that. We're in our inquiry units and unit planners and all show examples of that throughout it. But we're still all learning and having to make sure that we incorporate all those into it. So the opportunity to have time to look at those core standards and the national standards and the new assessments that will be coming down the pike in place of ISTEP down the road. It's just time time. There's a multitude of things that people just really just need to get together and have conversations about, and we get better because we have those conversations and we all know we're on the same page.
You will notice on this draft, the current draft, that it is different than some thoughts we have shared with you before. On previous thoughts we've shared with the board on teacher hours, the additional professional activity time was at the end of the student day at the elementary level. It was feedback from the task force, actually, that Dr. Branna and Dr. Milliman described, which is a collaboration with WTEA and administration, that was shared the idea that it may be best to have that professional activity time before the student day at elementary. So that's why you see that significant change as to when that professional activity occurs on this current draft.
Okay. Any other questions from elementary?
Mrs. Spanarelli?
I remember when my son was in elementary having speech and hearing therapy, and that time was really short. Will this extended time impact the amount of time that
Well, that's a great question, and I would think it's probably child to child and what the needs are, but certainly another hour of the day actually implies that any child, any need children have, we can add more time to it. So, I mean, the speech therapist will be working that extra time also, so certainly they could either see other children that need to be seen or could have more time with those, absolutely. And a lot of our speech therapists now, they do just such great work separately in pulling out, but also in pushing in, and allows them to go in would give them, again, more time to go in during the reading blocks and do some work with certain children or with small groups, too. So that's a good point, and that will be available.
Mr. Kite. Ms. Reynolds, I think I know the answer to this, but I want to make sure that I do. Under the what you anticipate as being the administration's proposal, one of the concerns that I hear people talking about is the kind of the one-size-fits-all. Obviously, there are things that we have to do at the same time. As we march down the IB road, and there are things that we've had to do and will have to do as we align the middle schools for, I'm going to use the wrong acronym or body, but the North Central accreditation, or what used to be. But there are also, I know some people are concerned that that the administration is going to try kind of a one-size-fits-all in all buildings. I presume that even with this extra time, there's obviously, I assume the administration's going to know that what works at Greenbrier may be different at Allisonville, may be different at all the other elementary schools, Springville.
Certainly. I mean, we all know we have a need for professional learning communities and staff development. The staff development varies from school to school based on what those needs are, and the schools design a lot of their own. We design some district level, but certainly that's up to every school. Every month they design their own. At the same time, everybody has staff meetings, but those staff meetings are designed by the principal and the staff at the school and know what their needs are. And, many of our schools may meet weekly or bi-weekly for PBS, but then some others may have their leadership team involved in, some other groups have book studies. I mean, it's just about professional growth and the opportunity to see that we all get it, and that some things are just so important that we don't want to leave it to who wants to stay for it, but let's make sure that we all get parts of it. And there's always the time for those that want to go and do other things on their own. But this is, it's certainly that I could see one day a week being very often smaller teams of teachers working, and not everybody always involved, but I think most days that it'll be a pretty full amount of great professional growth, and working again towards how do we make sure that what students are getting in this district is the highest level that we can give them, based because we've had the training we need, and because we're having the conversations and we're teaching one another those things, and we're all on the same page as a school.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay.
Mr. Doss is going to share some specific logistics regarding secondary. The middle school is unique, as well as the Career Center, as well as the high school. So we're looking at kind of three different pieces. One piece I will point out with the high school specifically is that, as Dr. Brown shared, the current teacher day is a 7-hour workday with a 30-minute lunch, so 7.5-hour day currently. As you will see, currently our high school student day is 7.5 hours. So those teachers work the exact same day as students are there. By contract, certainly we have teachers that come before and stay after their contract hours, but we don't have extra time at the high school before or after students leave via teacher contract time to work with teachers in these professional activities we're describing. As you know from years past, when I've stood before you requesting to look at all different kind of scenarios for the high school with late start Tuesday and early dismissal option opportunities, just trying any way to try to get some professional time with teachers to be able to collaborate together. This would eliminate all of those warehousing of student ideas that we have brought before you in the past. So Mr. Doss does have some logistical information to share with you.
Yes, and to add to what Dr. Woodson shared, I think the high school is also unique in that both the middle school and the elementary do have some opportunities within the student day for teachers to collaborate. And I think it goes without saying, based on what Mrs. Reynolds shared, and Mr. Pomeranke and Mrs. Valagopal, that there truly is a huge need for collaboration. I think, and it's not just in our area of education. I mean, those of you in your areas, I'm sure there's a strong need for that. But at the high school, there are no opportunities during the day to do that. And obviously, we have teachers who biology teachers who need to meet with other biology teachers, and then to compound that, biology teachers also teach zoology. So not only do they need to meet with their fellow biology teachers, but they need to meet with the zoology teachers as well. And right now in our current framework, that's not a possibility. While we do have the 45-minute additional day this year, when you really look at that, it's about 35 minutes from the time the students are dismissed. You obviously have to get the students dismissed. As big as the school is, teachers need to find their way to their meeting place, and 35 minutes just is not enough. And it's not, and it just doesn't. While it's an improvement from what we had previously, it's just not enough to do the things we need to do. At the high school, many of the questions beyond what we're going to do those days revolve around the logistical piece. And because the high school is the first of the three tiers, doing things before school would be a real challenge. It wouldn't be fair to ask teachers to get there at 6:15 or 6:30 in the morning. So all of these opportunities need to occur after school. Well, how is that compounded? Well, obviously the high school is also the one level where we have more students involved in extracurricular activities. So truly we have to take a creative approach. We've had a lot of discussions through the task force. I've had a lot of teachers from North Central approach me about how is this going to play out. For example, obviously there are many, many clubs in North Central, and those of you who have had children go through the high school, you know that those are great opportunities for kids. You know, not every student is an athlete, not every student is part of a performing arts group, but the clubs provide a huge opportunity for our students. We don't believe that is a barrier. We still believe, obviously, every Monday and Friday there are opportunities for people to meet. We also know that people are going to look for opportunities beyond that time to meet with the clubs. And the other thing that's unique about clubs, they don't meet every day like an athletic team or a performing arts group. Oftentimes they meet about once a month, okay, sometimes more. But obviously looking for one day a month is a lot easier, even though you've dedicated 3 days to collaboration for teachers. So we don't really perceive that to be a real problem. One other question is regard to tutoring. We have some teachers who tutor in the Learning Center after school. And keeping in mind the Learning Center operates until 7 o'clock each evening. Now, so 3 days a week, if the teachers are involved in collaboration, that might mean that if they still want to tutor, they may have to do so sometime between 3:40 and 7 o'clock. But obviously, if they're tutoring from 3:40 to 4:40, that still would get them out of the building at a reasonable time, and to be able to go home and do the things they do as parents and members of families. So we don't see that as a barrier. But at the same time, most of the tutors who are involved in that program really aren't even our teachers. They're instructional assistants that extend their day by doing that. So it's not a situation that's impacting a large number of individuals. In terms of what will we do with the students, okay? And the good thing is we've already crossed that bridge, as you know, since we have the extended time on Tuesdays. 1 day a week, we have to find a way to supervise those students who are involved in extracurricular activities. What does that look like? Okay, we open up large spaces at the high school, whether it be the cafeteria, whether it be the performing arts classroom, lots of big spaces where in fact, what we envision right now with the athletes, that the athletic directors may be holding a study table, for that time. That would probably, students would have to arrive by 2:50, and by 3:40 they'd be dismissed. They'd have a 50-minute window of time in which to get some studying done. And those of you who had kids at the high school who are very involved, that's always a crunch trying to find that time. So that would build in that. Same thing is true with the performing arts group. So will it create some challenges? Clearly it will. But the administration of the high school feels good about it. They think that the advantages far outweigh the disadvantages, And the other thing that's nice about the high school, you really do have some kids who could go over to Steak and Shake and do some things and come back if necessary, so you don't have the restrictions that you would have at the middle school regarding transportation. But we believe that the things that will happen in those professional learning communities, the opportunity to give teachers to work on the MYP unit planners that we don't currently have, an opportunity for professional development, since we no longer have the opportunity to dismiss students midway through the day to provide that. And we also don't have professional development dollars, so most of our professional development is done in-house. So we have key leaders. I know that we have Mary Beth Borkowski, English teacher at the high school, who does an awful lot of that, and that would extend the window of opportunity for her to work specifically with teachers. You've heard about the Common Core state standards. We're going to roll those out in the next couple of years. We have to find an opportunity for teachers to meet the literacy standards that are part of that are infused in humanities and in science and in all the what we call technical subjects, PE, health, world languages. We have to have time for the teachers to meet, to plan and make sure those things work with their current framework. So we have to have the time. So those are some questions specific to the high school. Dr. Woodson, anything else about the high school?
Mr. Brannigan would have loved to have been here tonight, but he is supporting our girls at sectionals, who just had a major victory with a 42-39 win, and we're proud of them. But he did share, yes, we're very, very proud of them.
Top-ranked.
It was a top-ranked school, that's exactly right. But he did share regarding athletics. We've had a lot of question about athletics. He said that there is a tremendous support of coaches who are lay coaches who would not be involved in this professional activity time because they aren't during the day certified teachers. They are lay coaches. They just come into North Central to coach, who could, he described, go ahead and begin a practice, facilitate a study table, as Mr. Doss said, but he said a tremendous amount of the coaching staffs for the myriad of athletic opportunities we have for students are lay coaches, and this would not obviously impact lay coaches being able to go ahead and start coaching with their sports.
And we'd like to spend a little time speaking to the middle school situation. Not nearly as many questions at that level, but there are a few. In fact, might have Miss Linda Lawrence, the West Lane principal, come join me, and that way, in case you do have questions, she can speak a little more directly to the situation, since she's living it every day. But in terms of the middle school questions, how's the fact that the middle school day, the close of the middle school day is going to move from 3:50 to 4:10? How's that going to impact extracurricular competitions? Very good question. And in talking to the athletic directors, clearly this presents one more challenge for them, but they believe that in talking to their colleagues at the other school districts that it might involve the athletic competition starting about 15 minutes later. And but again, with the whole idea of lengthening the elementary day and minimizing the impact, we see that as kind of a small concession to make. But we think it's very doable, and it doesn't involve any supervision of students or anything to that effect. What will happen at the middle school in terms of the time after school? How will that be utilized in terms of the extra time for teachers? I think I'll ask Ms. Lawrence to speak to that.
As we look at after-school activities, they're going to remain very much the same. The later dismissal time shouldn't make a great impact. We'll look at our activity buses perhaps leaving a half hour later. Generally, they leave about 5:45. We'll look at a 6 o'clock departure time. Just have to make dawdling children move a little faster. I don't see it making any great impact. And the teachers that are invested in after-school activities would remain invested. The extra time, as we've talked through, it isn't going to change a club sponsor or a tutoring session with a child at all.
And Ms. Lawrence, since most of the professional development activities, professional learning communities at the middle school will take place before the students arrive, what might that look like? What things will we see at the middle school?
The great thing with this, and this is probably the most exciting thing, at the middle school, the nature of the schedule is you can always meet with your grade level. But middle school teachers teach various levels. There may be an algebra class being taught at the 7th grade level, an algebra class being taught at the 8th grade level. Those teachers can never get together. So now we can have a true professional learning community with students, with teachers meeting that are teaching same kinds of subjects. The other thing is
the communication that can go across the district. We have art teachers that are in isolation in the school they're in now. We could look at days that we say, art teachers, you'll meet at Eastwood this morning. World language teachers, you'll meet at Wesleyan, so they can talk across with each other, creating large learning communities for the MYP. That the reflections of MYP do need time for discussion, and you can't do it all over a computer. So you look at that opportunity for rich conversations. Teachers are so dedicated to what they want. They've always said we need more time, and now we're providing that time for them.
Any additional questions?
Mr. Doss, you mentioned tutoring opportunities at the high school. In the case, and I think you spoke specifically about teachers who may be tutoring in the Learning Center,
right.
But if a student visited a teacher after the school day to get some extra help on a specific issue or problem they're having.
Exactly, and obviously...
How would that work under this proposal?
Sure, and obviously Mondays and Fridays are always open, but in the event that students don't, it doesn't always play out that way, that they need help on Monday or Friday. So there will be situations or opportunities, if a teacher's not involved in a meeting that day, he or she would be free to meet with students. That wouldn't be an impediment. For example, there may be times dedicated to committee work at the school, but not every teacher will have a need for their committee to meet, okay? But they've got that window of time that they're there. That would be a time that they could meet with students and address and provide student support.
This detail will not be a part of the actual board vote because your board vote will just be on the actual teacher hours and those additional responsibility evenings that Dr. Brown mentioned. But in our conversations at the task force meetings, we have outlined, which would be a part of the administrative guidelines, how these times could be used. And I do want to mention these aloud. These would be across all levels, but it's this professional activity time, this 50 minutes 3 times a week, that could encompass some of these listed activities. Professional learning communities, staff faculty meetings, committee meetings, professional development, international baccalaureate training, planning or indoor collaboration, teacher collaboration, case conferences, parent contact and collaboration, leadership meetings, school improvement plan work, data team meetings, administrator or teacher collaborations in smaller groups or one-on-one, district meetings, academic supports to students, which is the tutoring that we've been talking about, curriculum work, technology learning sessions, interdisciplinary meetings, classroom or curriculum preparation, and JEL has some specific uses of this 50 or their 30-minute daily time, which would be advisory committee meetings, visitor develop internship sites, career cluster meetings, adult education class professional development, and post-secondary meetings. So we have clearly outlined a wide variety of things that this 50 minutes 3 times a week could be used for. We don't, however, want to lock it in to say every Tuesday every school in the district has to do professional learning communities. We still want that to be personalized, as it was mentioned before, to be based on building specific needs.
I had another question about activity buses, late buses. Sure. This is Ms. Lawrence mentioned. And I'm trying to recall, activity late buses run on Fridays at this point in time?
Monday through Thursday.
Okay. And is that something that, given this proposal, which might make Fridays one of those days for some after-school activities?
We generally, at the middle level, do not have activities on Friday because of family time, getting people home, doing what they need to, unless we have a dance or an open gym in the evening. But no bus. There's no need for buses on Friday.
Sure. And I know, Mr. Doss, you mentioned the possibility of clubs taking place on Monday or Friday.
I think that's something we'll need to look at in terms of late bus. We know for sure that the times that the late buses run might have to be altered given the change in the student day, and I think that's something we'll have to evaluate and assess. Would it be better to if the teachers are all occupied on a Wednesday and students couldn't stay after for clubs? Do we need to look at that on a Friday? Haven't gotten to that detail yet. Obviously, we've got a little time to do that, but that is something we need to take into consideration.
And Dr. Woodson, I thought it was interesting and helpful, the point you made that the types of activities that this time would be used for would be determined at each building. I'm assuming by the leadership in that building and then teachers in that building in communication, dialogue with leadership about what they feel they need and what school improvement plans indicate, data indicates is a real big desire.
Our big drivers for all of these things that I mentioned are twofold. State mandates, threefold, I guess. State mandates, district-wide initiatives, and then school-specific areas of need based on their school improvement plans. We don't have any buildings working just on random thoughts right now about, hey, next week let's talk about this or let's do professional development on this. It's all very thoughtfully done. Right now they're talking about their school improvement plans for this coming school year already because they'll be due for Title I requirements this spring. So it is all very, very thoughtful. Mr. Doss, Mrs. Reynolds are in constant contact right now and would do so in the future with all of the principals about their collaboration with teachers regarding current professional development. And those same lines of communication at the building level and building to central office level would all stay in place and be maintained.
And Mr. Deswater, I would add that with North Central being probably the most complex in terms of all the logistical pieces, that in my discussions with Mr. Brannigan, he indicated that his goal is to meet with his teachers between now and the end of the school year and literally have all of next year mapped out, and with collaboration and input from them, so that when the teachers leave for the summer, they'll know what this is going to look like and what will be involved.
Mr. Kite?
I'd probably a couple of questions, but a follow-up on that is that the same thing that you would contemplate, for example, Ms. Lawrence, at the middle school level, mapping it out?
Yeah, and that, the joy this year of getting the extra time with the Tuesday mornings, my teachers have known since they walked into school exactly what we're going to cover, and it's been very rich, just not enough time. I don't find myself giving them the time that they need to do that communication piece, and now I'll be able to do that. But I want to map it out, but I want their input. We sit at school improvement and talk about what we'll want to do next year, just for the school improvement piece.
Go ahead. Mr. Kite. Well, this is a little more general, and I was really going to direct it to Dr. Woodson. In looking at the petition that was presented tonight, I know that different folks who have spoken to the administration have addressed a lot of the different points. Is there anything that you think is else that's relevant for the board's consideration, like on affordability or any of the
Absolutely. This process feels so very, very different than past because the law is requiring it. Dr. Brown alluded to the legislative changes from 2011 as to why in the world is this feeling so different. Prior to this year, all of these discussions were conducted at the bargaining table through negotiations with our Teachers Association. And then the school board voted to approve the contract that was negotiated, but all of these discussions were not done in this manner prior to the changes in the legislation. Now the legislation says it is prohibited for us to bargain teacher hours at the bargaining table. It is prohibited for us to have teacher hours as a part of the teacher contract now. The law does require us to discuss teacher hours with our Teachers Association, which is the process we've described that has happened tonight. So it is very different. It's hard. Change is very, very difficult sometimes. We're all trying to wrap our heads around all the legislative changes with evaluation and the way that we, what things that can be negotiated now and can't be, and what can be included in the teacher contract and can't be. But teacher hours is one of those significant changes that now it's discussable. We're asking the board to approve the teacher hours because we think it's important to have your stamp of approval on that. But it's no longer allowed by law to be bargained or a part of the teacher contract.
But I mean, to be specific, and I appreciate that. I guess I was talking about like the bullet points. Is there anything else to say? I know we had a study session. It seems like it was on a weekend, a long weekend.
It was.
We talked about things like affordability, and I know Ms. Ritz was there, and others. Anything else to say on any of those?
This is specific to the teacher hours plan. So there isn't anything else to say. The law doesn't allow me to bargain outside of the bargaining table, and I would not do that because it's against the law, but once we do bargain, it does not allow me to bargain teacher hours. So in accordance with the law that's been established by the 2011 legislature, I have to abide by those guidelines.
Right, I understand. I guess I'm not asking a very clear question, because I know you're working mightily to answer it, but I think maybe I'm just asking the question for it. They make different points in the petition, like wanting a plan that preserves after-school programs, and that's been addressed by several people. Creating an affordable plan, that's been addressed as well. Determining the use of added time, you've talked about how that's going to be building specific and so on. I was just wondering if there was anything else, like number 4 about equal opportunities for all levels of teachers, if there was anything else that you wanted to say to any of these things, just while we're...
Sure. I think Mr. Doss and Mrs. Reynolds did a great job of addressing those very specific concerns with teachers who do something extra, whether that's choosing on their own accord to tutor or give students something extra academically, coaching a sport, facilitating a club. I think we've expressed that we have no goals in diminishing those opportunities for students or our staff to participate in. Sensitive to the ending time of Teachers' Day to promote continued attendance at district-level meetings, I think we've said that our goal in this is to have a lot of those district-level meetings during this time that we're calling this professional activity time. Certainly may there need to be some kind of meeting outside of that. Sure, I'm not going to say it will all be inclusive of that 50-minute time, because it's still just 50 minutes 3 times a week, but we are going to make conscious efforts to do that. We feel like the hours that are displayed in front of you are very conscientious of teachers who have families, who may even have other jobs and other responsibilities outside of their teaching hours, and we feel like they are still very, very appropriate to accommodate for all of those pieces. We don't have any requirement that is above a state hours required for state employees that we're asking for, so we feel like it's very, very equitable for the work that needs to be done for teaching and learning in Washington Township.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Turner. Actually, Mr. Kite touched on the first thing I want to ask. I was going to ask about this petition to see, because you have been answering most of these questions and points for me. I understand the new law states that you don't bargain teacher hours. I understand that. What I look at it as, I believe, what I've heard you say today and before in all the other meetings we've had, is that it's not the hours that you can bargain, but maybe Ms. Lawrence at her school, they find after the first year, the way they scheduled the PLCs or any activities during your extra time, maybe you need to adjust that for something else.
And we may need to adjust it next year.
Yeah,
we may set a plan out and go, well, this isn't working because we're not giving teachers enough time to do the work that they need to do.
Right.
So I think it's all open. It's all the way we approach it as a team.
Okay.
And I think that's what we need to think about, is this is a team effort. This is not a Linda Lawrence principal effort. It's the way that we will talk with our teachers.
And then that would go across the board to the other principals as well.
Yes.
And I think one of the points was made that I just wanted to clarify. I know Mr. Doss mentioned mapping out a plan for this, and yet I also heard the need for flexibility and wanting to outline some of the uses for this time, but wanting to be flexible, and certainly as data comes in or needs arise, PYP authorization,
State
MYP
mandates.
Authorization. New state mandates, really? There might be some of those coming. In addition,
We figure out how
when you mention mapping out how this might look, getting a sense, working through, giving an idea, but not necessarily making something that's concrete, something that could still be flexible for needs that are important for the education of students here in Washington.
Exactly, and I can envision things happening, like, for example, at North Central, going back to one of the concerns about clubs. If we feel like students aren't having access to their club sponsors, we look at that. We say, okay, on 2 days a month, then we're going to to either give you an opportunity to do a club and/or provide an opportunity for students to get academic support. Okay, and then the students would have that. We can be very creative with this, and obviously the whole focus is going to be on students. And so if we feel like we're losing, we're not making progress, down that road, or we're doing something that's adversely impacting students, we can correct in flight. And I think again, it's going to involve conversation, with the teachers, because from this point forward, I think that this is going to be a collaborative piece in each building, and it might look a little different in each building.
I think the one thing, if I could just add to that, the main purpose of all this is increased student achievement. We want to give the teachers the tools they need for increased student achievement. We also want to give the students access to teachers if there needs to be additional opportunities to tutor. I can only speak for West Lane, but you can come by West Lane any morning prior to school opening, prior to the times that teachers need to be there, and you'll have teachers there making up tests, giving help sessions, and then you can get there in the evening, and West Lane's parking lot has cars in it, because I'm still there, long past 6 o'clock. They could have left at 4 o'clock. So the idea of student achievement and that student being our main focus has got to be the piece that helps us make our decisions, is what is best for the child.
I think we've also touched on the other big part of this, and that is that change is difficult. The law has changed. While these decisions used to get done in conjunction with determining pay for teachers, the law now says that cannot happen. And that's one of the difficult pieces, I think, for our staff to deal with and to adjust to. I can speak personally, and I'm guessing it's also the sense of the board. I'll let them speak for themselves if they need to. I know the administration wants to continue to make and keep Washington Township a district that teachers want to come work in and work with our students, work with our staff. And so while we're dealing with this change, I guess I just wanted to reiterate to Dr. Woodson and her staff, I know that is one of your primary goals. That's certainly one of mine, and one that I hope we keep in mind, that while we're here primarily focused and our job is to educate students, that we want to make sure we have the most motivated staff that we can, and we want to continue to try to make this a better place for students to learn, for teachers to teach. So, are there any other comments or questions, board, for staff?
Dr. Woodson, just a quick general question. What's going on across the rest of the state with these two pieces, just in survey anecdotal form? I mean,
Sure.
Are most other districts at this point evaluating the two pieces, teacher and student hours?
It depends on the district. We have several neighboring school corporations who have taken a look at this. Obviously, we were at the bottom for elementary hours, instructional hours, so nobody else needed to do that for elementary school. But we do have a couple of neighboring districts who modified their student hours for whatever reason. I can't say it was all to extend the student hours, but they have their reasons and have played with student hours. Several of our school districts around us for this current school year modified teacher hours. Again, they may not have had the same objective as ours, gaining professional activity time, so I can't speak to their objectives, but they have changed teacher hours for a few districts around us. Others have a very robust daily day as a part of their current agreement with their teachers. So it varies district to district.
Thank you.
If there are no further questions, thank you very much for the update and the discussion. We have typically tried to conclude our meetings by 9 o'clock, but we're going to run over this evening because we move on now to an update on the teacher evaluation tool. Dr. Brown.
All right. And I'll be as thorough and brief as I can. Close this out. Since our last update, I on the teacher evaluation, of course, as I mentioned earlier, new legislation once again prohibits us from bargaining that piece. So we've been in collaboration and feel really good about our progress with our association. On our last update, we did share that we did decide to develop our own model, and the alternative, according to new legislation, we could select that option and decide to do that in collaboration with our association. And so since our last update, we have worked extensively to outline the specific categories to make sure those parts of the evaluation model are in alignment with the state law. We have gone through, in collaboration with our association, each component in each part, and started to put specific values and components in place. And so we now are in the process of moving to our next meeting, which is scheduled for the 16th, to have even more detailed conversation around reviewing the framework, looking at the specific content in the rubrics, and really getting more feedback and getting into particular details of the evaluation model. We also, as you see the timeline that's been in your board packet, we have another training session coming up actually on this Friday, and then on next Friday to look at student learning outcomes, the achievement, the data outcome pieces that are also part of the evaluation model. So there's a lot of work left to be done, but we feel good about our progress with our teacher evaluation, and then start to really, and we have a plan to start to communicate that and share out with our teacher groups in more elaborate process, and then go from there. So I'll answer any questions around the teacher evaluation process that you may have at this time.
Questions, board? And Dr. Brown, since our fairly lengthy study of this subject at our Saturday session, the highlight of anything that's changed, is it primarily focusing in on this rubric 13 now?
That's the work. The work is really just getting down to the nuts and bolts of looking at the specific categories. The data piece is critical, the student learning pieces, the achievement data outcomes, and then really starting to narrow in on maybe a content area, tested areas, and versus non-tested, and then bringing together groups to try to outline what that looks like as we go forward. So that's pretty much the work we have ahead of us.
Also, prior to it coming to your table for a board vote on the evaluation, the teachers will have a vote according to the new legislation because we're not doing the state model. We feel very confident about that because it's been such a collaborative process, but the work that they'll be doing in the upcoming weeks will define collaboratively what about the evaluation will be defined by the time of that teacher vote, obviously meaning the same would be defined for your vote as well, and what work would left to be completed or further defined once those votes take place. The law doesn't exactly tell us what has to be done before those votes, but we certainly want to work collaboratively and agree on what will be done on the evaluation tool prior to the vote and what work will still be defined after the vote.
And just out of curiosity, I was trying to recall if a district went with the state evaluation template model, would those kinds of things like the specifics of the number 13 rubric on student achievement already be available, or would this process...
There's still some definition each district will have to do if they choose the state RISE model. There is discrepancy amongst different organizations as to whether that state model requires a vote of the teachers or not. We're glad we're not in that camp because we're very, very proud of the work we're doing to personalize our own evaluation tool. And I think either way we would have gone, we would have wanted the support of both, not just the school board, but also our teachers as well here in Washington Township.
Any other questions on the teacher evaluation update, board? No. Thank you, Dr. Brown. We'll move on to superintendent evaluation update then.
Superintendent or
administrator? Sorry, administrator.
He's included in that. So, We are also, because of the law, our certificated staff includes administration. We therefore have to develop an administrative evaluation model as well. The unfortunate part is that there is really no framework to start from, so we've been evaluating, listening to other models and those kind of things. And we have an administrator committee that we developed and have gained a lot of input and feedback from those groups as we've met. Per the timeline that's provided to you, we are in the process of really looking at the Rise Indiana model as a framework, but really trying to possibly do a similar work that we've done with our teacher evaluation model, and really line that up with more meat and more rigor, but at the same time, we know the pieces of the teacher evaluation will feed into that as well. So our next meeting, which is scheduled tentatively for the 22nd of February for our administrative group, we'll dig more into that. We've actually got to a point where we are doing, using that framework with the Rise Indiana. We were hoping that the state would give us a little more guidance there, but we've not received that at this point. And so really in collaboration with Dr. Milliman and Mr. Doss and Ms. Rich, the association, we've worked to gain the information we need from teacher evaluation to really help us to put in some of those components for our administrative evaluation, since the administrator's piece, looking at the Rise Indiana, has a component about human capital and teacher effectiveness. And so those are things that we got to examine. And then the other piece is that with the administrator model, as going deeper as well, because we have the same issue we'll have to address in our committee, is developing rubrics that are administrator role or job specific. And there's tons of questions that we have to answer as well in that regard. So, but we do feel good about the work we've done so far, but we know, once again, there's so many unknowns that we just still don't have the answers for, but we're continuing to work toward those things as we go forward in our collaboration in our groups and with our committee. So, as we continue to update you as we go forward. But as far as the administrator side, it's really, we have a little bit more, or a lot more unknowns really than we do with the teacher side at this point. So,
at least the pool to be evaluated is smaller.
Right.
Maybe that's.
I will say this: the one benefit is that in our personnel groups across the state, we're not on an island by ourselves. So we're all in the same boat. They're experiencing the same thing, and many of them are just waiting for more guidance from DOE. But under Dr. Wilson's leadership, and I really agree that we need to move in a direction that will be best for Washington Township. And if they come out with something at some point that gives us what we need, then we'll look at it at that time. So, all right.
Questions, Board?
Question.
Thank you for the update, Dr. Brown. And thank you all for your patience with my gaffe. It wouldn't be a good board meeting without several gaffes from the president. Look forward to passing this roll on in July 16th meeting to someone else. With that, we move on to our final agenda item, board discussion and liaison reports. Mr. Kite, you're looking at me studiously. I'm confident you're all prepared to go.
I can do mine in 2 seconds. Dr. Woodson, I think, covered them both, and then Ms. Vanrati and I have talked about the task force, our attendance at yet another excellent meeting. And Dr. Woodson covered the fact that the foundation has opened registration to the Great North Run. Very easy to find, just like we do everything else nowadays. Just Google it if you don't know the website. So that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Kite. Mr. Turner.
No, I have nothing to pass.
Thank you. Mrs. Vanrati? And Ms. Harris.
I move we adjourn.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you all.